Sarah, can I tell you about something exciting that I've recently come across and have been a fan of for many years, but now I have something even better about it?
Please do.
Can you guess what it is?
Absolutely not.
Okay. I want to tell you today. Okay. So have you ever done the thing where you finished a really sweaty workout in the summer and you're just dripping with sweat and you have to get back in your car and your car already smells a little bit from previous attempts at trying to stay dry? What do we typically do? We try and like shove a towel into the headrest and then it falls down while you're driving, gets you soaking wet.
Or you put a seat all the way back and sit at the tippy edge of it just so you don't get your seat all sweaty. Yes, we've all been there.
Yes. So actually, a few years ago, about 5-7 years ago, Steve bought me sweatproof seat covers for a gift. And I was annoyed at him at the time. I was like, what kind of gift is this? This is the worst. But actually, it was the most ingenious idea because these covers, like, it's kind of like a child's hooded towel. You put it over the back of the seat, it slides down, it covers the seat, stops the sweat. So then you take it off when you get to the other end and your seat is dry. You would never know. You can obviously have that dry and then put it back in. So I'm excited to tell you that now I have a new one because my old one was just starting to like fade away. He got a cheap one. And I want to tell you about these Dri Seats. So it's going to give you protection for your seats. You can install it in seconds. It's got slip resistance, so it will stay in place. And it fits any car, although if you have a truck, there is a bigger size. But you don't have a truck, do you?
You know, it's funny. My husband has a truck, and I literally got yelled at last week for getting his seats all sweaty. So these sound like something I might need to get.
Yes. So they're thin, light, they're washable, they don't stain, they're perfect for like post-run, especially on those summer days. So I want to tell the listeners that if you use code R4R, as in the number, R4R20, you are going to get 20% off your first order at dri-seats.com. So you can protect your car seats after your workout, after doing yoga, going to the beach, whatever it might be. And it's just a brilliant idea that I'm so thankful that I've had over these years. And I love that I have this new one that works so well. And so, yeah, I just wanted to tell you about it. So go check it out. R4R20.
It sounds like my days of wiping down my seats with baby wipes trying to cover up my mess. Sounds like my days of that might be over.
Or also it could help you if you've had one of our accidents we talked about in a previous episode, right? As it is machine washable. All right. Thank you to Dri Seats for supporting us with this episode, and go use that code R4R20 at dri-seats.com.
All right, Tina, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, I guess.
Well, technically, I never left. This is our third one in a row. All right. So this question I thought was interesting because obviously you and I have a ton in common as runners. And, you know, we share a lot of history, but I thought it'd be interesting to share for people who are interested in the other side of our life. So both of us have authored books. So I want to know for you, because I'm curious if our answers are the same, what was the hardest part about writing your book? And then also, what was the thing that you enjoyed the most?
Yeah. Well, before I get to that, I want to just like have you talk a little bit more about, are you allowed to say the name?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I wrote.
So our books are so good. Go ahead and say it. Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But I want to, like, for anyone who doesn't know and maybe missed your announcement, like, tell them about what you mean by authored a book, if they look your name up right now, it won't come up.
Yeah, so I wrote a novel, actually, that has nothing to do with running. It is a novel called Middletide, and I sold it to Simon & Schuster in January, and it will be coming out May of 2024. And it's the type of book for anyone who's read like Where the Crawdads Sing. It's very much like an ode to the beauty of the natural world, and specifically like the Pacific Northwest where I grew up, but it also has a little bit of everything else. All right, Tina, what about you?
I'm so proud of you. I just want to take this moment to say that I really like you took, and we're going to talk about this at some point on the podcast, but you really took like such a hard situation of insomnia and postpartum time, and you just made it into something beautiful. And I know I've said this to you in person many times, but I'm so proud of you. So thank you for sharing that. In answer to your question, what was the hardest thing? There was a few things. One recently was reading the audiobook. You really see all the mistakes you made, and not so much like you put the wrong there in the thing and they didn't catch it or you didn't catch it, but it's just like you really see the things that you wish you would have read it one more time to catch. Yeah. However, it ties into the actual hardest thing in a way that, like, because you've read this so many times, because you know it, it is so hard to read it like with fresh eyes and not be like, yep, oh yeah, I remember this section, and just kind of end up skimming because you know it, you've read it, and you're like, whatever, yep. And you just kind of, you can't quite slow yourself down enough to do it. So that's where reading out loud maybe would have helped me had I read it out loud. But even so, that was the hardest thing, was you just get stale with the words. And you just can't
it's smelling the perfume for too long, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And so it was hard to read it out loud and be like, oh, wow, I should have caught that. Or like, oh, that's a run-on sentence. Or, oh, I already talked about that in the previous chapter. And really be confronted with it and know that there is nothing you can do about it. Mm-hmm. So while there were other challenging things along the way, I think it is just that you get to a point where you just can't take it in anymore. And you have to let go of it, and then you have to face the fact that that is what it is.
You know, I think it's helpful to remember, like, you are also the person who is hypercritical about it. So it's like, if you have a repetition, you're like, oh, I said that like 3 chapters earlier, no one else is going to realize that. You know?
Yeah.
No one else is going to realize that. But I hear what you're saying with like, literally it's like smelling the perfume too long. You can't smell it anymore. And so the one thing that I do, Tina, and you should honestly do this next time, like in the Word document, when I'm editing a chapter, I literally use text to voice feature on my computer. So I hear it in like an AI voice. And so I can hear, because honestly, like, you read your own words, you will just skip right over the mistakes because you know what you meant to say, you know, so you'll just skip right over it. But that is how I catch like hundreds of errors. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I never would have caught that. So that is my little trick.
That's so good.
With catching
so what is yours then, if that wasn't it?
The hardest part? This is really, I'm just very, very conceited with my work. So much so that like I get opinions from people whose opinions I value, like my agent and my editor. And I don't agree with them sometimes. Like that to me, it's harder when I have to hand the book over and it's no longer my baby. Like my Simon & Schuster has bought that book. They own it. It belongs to them. So the decisions that they want to make, as far as, you know, like you and I have discussed, things that are out of my hands, like ultimately my cover is not my decision. Like it's just so difficult. And that is one thing that I feel like self-publishing has going for it, is like you are in the driver's seat like 100% of the time. Whereas I feel like for me, having to take a back seat creatively is so tough. Like it's really, really difficult to see decisions made that are not up to me, because I don't want someone to hold that book and be like, oh, why did she go with this cover? And I'm like, well, like a debut author has little to no sway in the cover that ends up on their book. And people don't realize that. I think so many times people blame an author for things in the book that they don't like when it was not the author's decision. So that has probably been the toughest thing. But yeah, for you, what was the most enjoyable thing?
I mean, I am really enjoying, like, you know, Zoe and I getting to enhance these conversations as we're having them with other podcasts and with media, like getting to hear the things that resonated with people and be like, oh, wow, that was the bit that really spoke to you. Like, I love hearing that, like, there were certain things that really light people up when they talk about it that they haven't thought about before. So like for me, these books that I've been reading all along, these like non-fiction self-helpy books, there's so many things in it that just like are light bulbs for me. And actually related to that, you, Sarah, before we recorded this, I was recording an episode with Brad Stolberg. And Sarah, I was talking to Brad and it was like 5 minutes before like at the end of the conversation, and Sarah just pops up in the conversation. Thankfully, just worked her way out again, physically leaving the square, and then physically by leaving the room.
I just diagonally exited my chair.
But Brad is a good example of someone that there's so many things in his books that I take with me in my life, and knowing that I now have created some of those that impacted other people in a similar way was like, it's just been such a good feeling. So I would say that. But I do also love the fact that Zoe and I were so yin and yang in our writing styles that it allowed mine to like defluff a bit and hers to fluff up a bit. So we could reach this point where it was like a more digestible kind of voice.
Yeah, I like that.
So, yeah. All right, your turn.
Most enjoyable. I think similar to running, like in a marathon training block, my favorite part is not the race itself. Like it's always the weeks and weeks of just the grind. Like I legitimately enjoy the writing process, but it's very different from running in that like let's say the human brain is like a swimming pool. Like running takes place in the shallow end of the pool. It's very grounding. It's very basic. It's like that almost primal, almost brutal instinct to beat the person next to you to a line on a pavement. Like that's a very basic human thing to do. Writing fiction for me takes place in the other end of the pool. It's the deep end. It's vastly subconscious, to the point that like after I've been at it for a couple of hours, I almost come back to reality, like startled to find myself not in this world, but back in my own house. But I think in writing this book in particular, I have learned that like for many years in running, my abilities were exceeded by my ambitions. Like when I thought, like, oh, I'm going to make an Olympic team or I'm going to do all this, like that wasn't really within my physical wheelhouse. Where I've now started to realize in writing, I think for many years in writing, my ambitions were exceeded by my abilities. Like I never really thought I could handle a plot this complicated or a book that weaved its way through two different timelines that end up joining together. And I was just thrilled to find out that not only was it not as hard as I thought, but it was like really, really enjoyable. And yeah, I legitimately like that process of, like you said, like having, insomnia, like being up at 3 a.m. I was able to forget that I had a rough night, and I could just like sink into this novel for 3 hours before my kids woke up and just live in this other world. So for me, yeah, the process, I'm happiest when I am halfway into a novel working out the kinks. That's definitely my happy place.
I love that. That's so beautiful and such a good example of enjoying the process, not the outcome on the other end. Like you really got something out of just writing it. And you say that, does that mean you're writing another one already?
Oh yeah, no, I've already written another one. And I just gave it to my agent. So we'll be selling that in the fall. And then I'm already plotting the next one. Like I'll probably end up writing, I think about 2 books a year. I think that's about what because now it's like, it is my full-time job. So it's like, I have to do something. So
I love that.
Yeah. So I'll be
so excited. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. This was a great topic. And yeah,
when am I going to get to read your book? When are you sending it to me?
It's on the way. Or it should be. I'm waiting for the publisher to get it out.
And for people who are listening, I will, hopefully, I'm very, very excited that I will be jumping on to interview Tina and Zoe about the book, which is going to be so, so fun. I cannot wait. Can't wait to read it. Can't wait to talk about it.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you to our listeners. We will see you next time.